Tennessee's already off and running in the basketball transfer portal. Rodney Rice has emerged as a name that we probably need to start knowing. That and so much more to Wednesday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Wednesday morning Locked On Vols. I'm Eric Cain. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every single day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Here on today's show, we're going to take a closer look at Rodney Rice, who is the former Maryland teammate of Tennessee's newest transfer portal addition, Jacoby Gillespie, and how realistic could that be? And if so, we need to probably learn about the player. Tennessee basketball moving fast in the transfer portal, so we're going to discuss that here in segment number one, along with what Rick Barnes had to say about Jaylen Carey, the former Vanderbilt forward, who officially signed with Tennessee on Tuesday morning. So that's coming up here in segment number one. I'm going to give you a couple of positives and a couple of negatives from my point of view from Tennessee football spring practice, with it being in its last week, and of course the orange and white game just days away coming up on Saturday, and then we'll catch up with Josh Ward for a little Ward Wednesday hit in segment number three. Okay, so Tennessee, Jacoby Gillespie comes from Maryland. Tennessee got Jaylen Carey, he came from Vanderbilt. So you've got a point guard, you've got a forward, a front court player that's got some versatility to his game, can stretch out and do some different things. But more than anything, he's a low post scorer, and it's not like he's going to average 20 points a game or anything like that, but he is a threat in the low post to put up there and give you a basket. And that's kind of what we talked about as soon as the season was over, what the difference needs to be to get Tennessee over that hump, right? To get Tennessee, but not only to the Elite Eight, but to the Final Four for the first time in program history. It feels like you need to play more inside out. It feels like you need to have more court balance. And I think Jaylen Carey can certainly help in that regard. Again, this is not a guy down there that's going to put up 20 points a game, but a guy that is a threat on the offensive end. So that's Jaylen Carey. We talked about him yesterday. Jacoby Gillespie, we talked about him a couple of times throughout this process, as he's the East Tennessee native from Greenville, where he went to Belmont and then to Maryland, and now he's here at Tennessee. Both these guys, multi-year guys, which is huge. But a new name that maybe we should start knowing a little bit. I'm not saying anything's intimate right now. I'm not saying anything's happening. I don't know. But Rodney Rice is a name that's continuing to be tied with Tennessee. Rodney Rice, former teammate of Jacoby Gillespie at Maryland, and he's a guy that's very, very productive. When you're looking at what Tennessee needs when it's building this roster, I think you want to have versatility and some depth in the front court, and now Tennessee's got four bigs that they feel pretty good about, right? You've got Felix Apar coming back, Cade Phillips coming back, J.P. Estrella is in that conversation. Now you add in Jaylen Carey, okay? Bishop Boswell in the backcourt. Of course, you bring in Jacoby Gillespie. You got these three incoming freshmen, and one of those, Brown, in terms of the front court player, is about 250 pounds already. You need a shooter, and you need maybe more than just one shooter. I'm not talking about a Dalton Connect or even a guy with the hype of a Chaz Lanier, right? But you need some guys who can put the ball in the basket, simply put, right? And Rodney Rice is one of those guys, okay? He's 6'4". Let's see, 6'4", about, I don't have his measurements in front of me. Oh, there it is. 6'4", 198 pounds. See, it's always in front of me, and I can't find it. Coming from Maryland, he is officially in the transfer portal, of course, as Maryland's coach left, for a new head coaching job. And so Rodney Rice is in the transfer portal. He, I believe, wants to play with Jacoby Gillespie. I think he's made that known that he wants to, play with his teammate. I think they're close. I could be wrong about this, but I think those guys have been roommates, at least in the past, maybe this past year. I think they want to play together. Does that mean it's going to happen? Not necessarily, but it is something to, pay attention to. Rodney Rice, shooting guard from Maryland, 6'4", 198 pounds. This past season at Maryland, he averaged 13.8 points per game, 2.2 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game in 36 contests this year. He shot 43% from the field, 37% from downtown, and he started 32 of 36 games. He made 83 pointers on the season. So that's great. 83 pointers on the season. When we're talking about Jacoby Gillespie, I think his number of three-pointers he made was 88. So a little bit down there, but anytime, again, you're shooting, not just shooting, but you're making, over 75 three-pointers in a season, that's not bad. That's pretty good, and that's a little bit of what Rodney Rice can bring to the table. In 20 games in Big Ten play this year, he averaged 14.8 points per game. So his season average actually went up, in terms of conference-only games. He shot 44% from the field, 35% from three in Big Ten play. Scored a season-high 28 points against St. Mary's, had 26 points against Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. He had 23 at Indiana back in the month of January. He scored 10 or more points in all but 10 games, so consistency is there with Rodney Rice. He scored 15 or more points in 16 games, not bad, and then 20 or more points in 6 games. So again, a guy that, when I'm looking at the stats on paper and everything, I just see consistency. The guy, continued to be consistent game in and game out, week in and week out, non-conference into conference. And so Rodney Rice is going to be one of those guys that's a shooter and is going to be coveted by several teams. And when you're looking at this roster, sure, it'd be nice for Jacoby Gillespie to get his buddy here, Jacoby Gillespie to get his former roommate here, and Rodney Rice, I think, wants to play with Gillespie. But more than anything, it would fill a need for Tennessee. Tennessee needs a shooter. I'm not saying one guy's going to come in and replace a Dalton Connect or replace a Chaz Lanier or anything like that, but he is a guy that can shot at a high volume, and was pretty productive. And so I think Rodney Rice would make a whole lot of sense to go and pick from Maryland yet again. A lot of those players entering the transfer portal again because their coach left for a new coaching job. I think Rodney Rice would make a whole lot of sense. Will that transpire? We'll see. Visits going to be set up. We'll see. What else is going to come in that recruitment? I don't know. Are there hurdles that can't be passed in regard to the Tennessee side? I don't know. But I do know that Rodney Rice is a guy that wants to play here at Tennessee. Rodney Rice is a guy that's got the blessing of Tennessee's Tennessee's first and best transfer portal commit, Jacoby Gillespie, and I think he's a guy that can fit a need here at Tennessee. So those 83 pointers, that's something that's not bad. He went 80 for 214 from downtown. So again, sign me up for a little bit of that. That is a name to know. We'll continue to pay attention and track a little bit as the week and the weeks go on. Transfer portal for football, the spring session, that opens up, I want to say next Wednesday, maybe next Tuesday. So it's about to get fast and furious for sure. And we'll talk a little bit about maybe some more needs for football in segment number 2 when we talk negatives and positives from spring football practice. But also, it went official on Tuesday that Jaylen Carey officially signed with the University of Tennessee. And again, 6'8", 245 pounds. Vanderbilt had a couple of really good games against Tennessee, a double-double in one game, scored 18 points, had 7 boards in another. Really, really good player for Vanderbilt, better player against Tennessee. He averaged 8 points, 5.7 rebounds, and a little over 20 minutes per game for Vanderbilt this past season. So, we talked about him. We broke down that signing and everything, but here's what Rick Barnes had to say with that commitment. Here's what Rick Barnes had to say officially when Tennessee released the signing of Jaylen Carey. Quote, "We are pleased to welcome Jaylen as well as his great family to Vol Nation. He is a tremendous person and has a distinct passion for the game that will blend nicely with the culture of Tennessee basketball." Here's some more on the nitty-gritty here. Jaylen is a physical power forward with versatility who can play with his back to the basket or face up. He is a proven SEC competitor with excellent hands, superb offensive instincts, quality passing ability, and a strong feel for the game. Jaylen's style will complement the post players we already have, and we cannot wait to get to work with him. End quote. Again, that's Rick Barnes on Jaylen Carey. Physical power forward, versatility, can play with the back to the basket or face up, SEC competitor, excellent hands, superb offensive instincts, quality passing, strong feel for the game. That's some pretty high praise there from Rick Barnes. And, speaking with some people earlier in the week, man, they are jacked up. They are pumped up about getting the commitment of Jaylen Carey over the weekend to Tennessee. I think that they're super, super pumped, super thrilled about that, knowing that you will now have a presence in the low post to be more balanced on the court. And so that is that's an awesome thing. That is really, really cool, no doubt. So, yeah, how about that? Jaylen Carey officially signing with the University of Tennessee, and Rick Barnes had a lot of great things to say about that. But who could be next for the University of Tennessee? Could it be Rodney Rice, shooting guard from Maryland? We'll have to see as the day goes along, but I do think that is a name that we should probably remember during this transfer portal cycle for sure. And of course, Nate Amend is still out there in the prep level, 5-star, highly rated guy, top 3, top 5 player in the cycle. Tennessee has always been in that one, okay? Like, it's never been like Tennessee's not been in it. Tennessee's not been competitive, but I do think Tennessee was kind of behind the pack a little bit, but I think that's changed here lately. I think it's a Duke, a Louisville, a Tennessee battle, and we'll see kind of where everything lies down. I don't know a timeline. I don't cover basketball recruiting, really that hardcore. I don't know a timeline or anything, but I do know that Tennessee's got a chance for sure for a guy like Nate Ament. All right, we'll continue breaking down what this roster looks like as Tennessee basketball continues to rebuild and reshape for the 2025-2026 season. Let's go to fall camp or spring camp for football. Orange and white game coming up on Saturday. What is one big-time positive that I've seen from spring practice so far this year? That's coming up next as we continue right now on your Wednesday Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources with the latest product info to help get you the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an online order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for the extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage now. It is your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. One more time, it is SH5 for 5% off your first order. All that and more at supplyhouse.com. Spring football practice continues. Really, it's in the last couple of days here. Wednesday, they're practicing this morning. Not to say they're not working out or doing anything meeting-wise, but they'll be back on the practice field on Friday. And then, of course, it's go time for the Orange and White, the annual playing of the Orange and White game coming up on Saturday. So they've been going at it a little bit since last month. They took a week off for spring break. And, how the spring, practice works, it's kind of like every other day, right? You practice, you're off. You practice, you're off. They try to stretch it out. Whereas in fall camp, they're going back to back to back to back to back. It's truly like a camp feel. Not 2 days or 3 days anymore, but they got it off easy for sure. But it's still kind of like a camp feel in terms of repetitive days in a row on the practice field. But spring practice is about to be over, and so I feel like at this point. And we'll see the orange and white game. We'll kind of get a gauge on some players and get eyeballs and all that, and that's great to see. But at this point, I feel like you got a pretty good deal on what the vibe of camp's been. So, somebody asking it was the Monday night chat actually on at VolQuest.com, and somebody said, hey, do you have a positive or negative? And I think this is a mailbag question a couple weeks ago as well. My one big positive, I think, and again, we don't get to see an awful lot, and that's a shame. But from conversations with people and from, what the coaching staff's kind of been reiterating, I think my big one positive would be you're going to leave spring camp with a lot of options on the offensive line. One guy specifically that's really come on here in the last week or so that, really is a good thing for Tennessee is Shamu Marov. Offensive tackle a couple of cycles ago, but they've slid him inside. He's a guard. And, is a highly rated prospect, a 4-star. Didn't see a whole lot of action last year. Dealt with an injury as well. But, Tennessee lost 4 of 5 starting offensive linemen. Tennessee lost some guard bodies. You went out and got Wendell Moy and Sam Pendleton, and you thought those are going to be plug-and-play guards, and that still very well may be the case. But the emergence of a guy like Sham, I think, opens the door for maybe Sham can play guard. You slide Sam Pendleton down to play center. I think William Satterwhite, who's kind of been the quote-unquote number one center, the starting center this spring, I don't think the job's won, but I think he's had a fine camp as well. He kind of beat out Vyson Lang, who kind of entered last season as the number 2 center, but there was obviously a competition there. And, by season's end, it was certainly William Satterwhite who was the backup center. I think he's had a good camp. But you have Satterwhite at center. I think Max Anderson is also a guy that can play both center and guard. I think he's had a pretty good spring, getting a ton of reps, taking advantage. So amongst those 5 guys, I guess we can call it, the Wendell Moy, Sam Pendleton, Sham, William Satterwhite, and Max Anderson, it feels like you've got 5 pretty decent options on the interior. And that's a great thing, knowing you left late December from the college football playoff loss. You left last season knowing you had to replace Cooper Mays and Andre Carrick and Javonte Spraggins, Jackson Lampley. Those were your internal options, right? The interior options, I guess. And so, sure, these guys haven't, played SEC football yet. I recognize all that, but it feels like those 5 have kind of had a really good camp. And then you look out on the exterior, and it sounds like Larry Johnson's had a pretty decent camp. And, Glenn Ellerby spoke, and he spoke about all these guys, a couple of weeks ago when he met with the media, and it didn't feel like he knows that there's still a long way to go, and that's fine. It's not supposed to be a finished product right now, okay? But, he said, it's got to, Larry Johnson's got to find consistency and all that, but he's done such a great job of, working his body, losing weight, finding some athletic ability, giving himself a chance to play. And he did that last year, and he played significant time for Tennessee on the road at Oklahoma, if you remember. We'll see where David Sanders is come week 1, game 1. Obviously, he's going to play a ton of football. I think he's going to start the overwhelming majority of games at right tackle. Maybe he'll start every game at right tackle. I don't know. What I do know, and I've continued to say this, and this is no slight on him, it's just, dude should be in high school right now. Okay, he's an early enrollee. Sure, 5-star plus offensive tackle, that's great. Okay, but you still got to catch up strength-wise. You still got to catch up with the mental side of things in terms of the playbook and all that. And from all accounts, he's done a great job this spring. He's been a sponge. He's been asking questions. He's been getting better. It's just, you don't just show up and start SEC football games in general, much less on the offensive line as a true freshman. So, he's going to play a ton. But could Larry Johnson open the season up as the starting right tackle and they split it? I don't know. We'll see. But I think Larry Johnson has put himself in position to play. I think Bennett Warren's coming along a little bit, but still got a little bit of ways to go. Of course, Lance Hurd. It's funny. We were talking about this on the VolQuest podcast. Nobody's really talking about Lance Hurd. So it's, well, do you wish they were, or is that a good thing? As long as he's out there practicing and, you're doing more than what he did in fall camp, right? Because he was injured, and, injuries are part of the game. I'll talk about that here in just a second. But he missed so much practice time, in spring and fall camp last year, that the fact that he's been out there, been a consistent practice player, put his head down and went to work, I think that's a good thing. So I think a positive for me is certainly some options that have been created on the offensive line. And that continues to go into this, not this narrative I'm pushing, but this line of thinking that I think the offensive line is going to be okay. I truly do. Missing Cooper's a big deal. But I think Tennessee's going to have some options and they're going to be okay. Now, the one big negative, and it's not specifically pointed at any individual personally or any position group specifically, but I would just say the numerous upon plethora of guys. There we go. Plethora. Let's use that. The plethora of guys that are missing practice because of offseason procedures or cleanup procedures or got nicked up a little bit. And Tennessee should always be super cautious. It's spring. You don't have a game this Saturday. Okay. This is the time to miss if you're going to miss. But I think some guys who've gotten nicked up a little bit and banged up a little bit or had offseason procedures, there's a huge line, a growing list of players who are not participating. And I think that's unfortunate. For a guy specifically like Nathan Robinson, man, he has got a lot of ability. Rodney Garner likes him. He is going to play next year if healthy, but man, he just can't stay on the field. It's like it's always something, and that's unfortunate. Defensive tackle position specifically, man, you've got Eason Moy, and then right now in spring, you've got Isaiah Campbell and Ethan Utley, 2 freshmen who are kind of 3 and 4 at the DT position because Jamal Wallace is out, Nathan Robinson's out, David Hobbs is out, and that's a position group that you've already been super thin by this spring because you lost Elijah Simmons, Omar Norman-Lott, and of course Amari Thomas. So I just think the sheer volume of guys that are missing practice right now, that would be a negative. But again, it's a contact sport. I'm not saying anybody's milking it. I'm not saying anybody's weak, soft. I'm not saying any of that, but it is kind of frustrating, or it is kind of disappointing, I guess, because these are reps for some guys that could be really making some moves up the depth chart or proving to the staff that you've got some depth. So all this to say, kind of where do you go next week when the transfer portal opens? I still don't have a gauge on the defensive backfield. I think a lot of those guys have flashed, the young guys. I think a lot of those guys have flashed, but do you feel confident enough that you have enough corner depth behind Jaylen McMurray and, of course, Ricky Gibson if you have to start the season without Jamal McCoy? Do you feel good about Boo Carter at the star position where he's returning punts, he's playing defense, he might play a little offense? Dude's going to have to get a break at some point. There's no Christian Harrison over there to split that job with anymore. Do you feel good about the backup options for Boo Carter at the star position? So I think defensive backfield, specifically corner, is still something I'm not sure about. And then I think defensive tackle body, for reasons I just mentioned, and then sure volume of or lack thereof, I should say, at the wide receiver position, I still think you need another body. And again, that's easier said than done. Who wants to come in here and be fourth or fifth in the rotation? Not many. But man, you are so thin at the wide receiver position. It's not like Tennessee didn't try to bring in multiple wide receivers, but you got one, Amari Jefferson. He's been banged up this spring. And you didn't really get anybody else. Rodarius Jackson's had a great spring. Travis Smith's had a good spring. And those guys are good. They're going to play. But you got Mike Matthews, Chris Brazzell, Braylon Staley, who's missed some time here. Joakim Dawson's on his way, and then Amari Jefferson. That's all you got in terms of scholarship wide receivers. So I think having said all this in spring, and again, we'll get to watch, and we'll have some more notes after practice this morning, and then, of course, at the orange and white game, positions you still may want to target in the spring window when that opens next week: cornerback, wide receiver, defensive tackle. We will see what Tennessee does. Maybe you feel good enough about those young guys at corner to where you don't need to go to the transfer portal. That would be fantastic. That'd be awesome. But I think from a bodies perspective, you take an interior defensive lineman if one wants to come, and you absolutely take a wide receiver for sure. All right, been a busy week. Was a busy weekend this past weekend in terms of the transfer portal for Tennessee basketball. What could be next for Tennessee basketball in the portal? I'll ask Josh Ward that question when we return right here for a little Ward Wednesday on Locked On Vols. Josh Ward, Rick Barnes already constructing and remaking this roster, looking ahead to the 25-26 season, and a couple of commits already here in the early week. I guess it was late last week, one here in the early week. We'll start in reverse order. Let's go to Jaylen Carey, Vanderbilt forward. Had a couple really good games against Tennessee this year in the Food City Center and out there on the West End. What is Tennessee hoping to get out of a forward in the front court player in Jaylen Carey?
I would say toughness, rebounding, another offensive threat, and a new kind of dimension maybe to the offense that we didn't see this past season. I think a lot of the production from front court players, which was mainly limited to Felix Akpar and Cade Phillips, depending on how you looked at Igor Milicic's role in the offense. But I think what they did with what they're able to do was solid. But we came out of that Houston game and other games earlier in the season saying, if there could be another front court scoring threat, that would be really good. And JP Estrella comes back from injury, but he's an unproven player. He hasn't proven anything, really, at the collegiate level. So to me, that left a question. Getting somebody like Jaylen Carey, who Tennessee fans saw in person and saw what he's capable of against Tennessee's defense earlier this season, I think is a really good addition to Tennessee.
So you got another player to throw into the front court. You really need to replace a lot of backcourt players, and Tennessee did that with its first addition out of the transfer portal. This was Friday afternoon in Jacoby Gillespie, and we know his story. East Tennessee guy, Greenville High School, Belmont a couple of years, Maryland All Big Ten, third team, and now coming to Tennessee by way of the transfer portal. Some consider him one of the top players in the transfer portal. What is Tennessee getting out of Jacoby Gillespie?
He is a box checker, I think, to fill Tennessee's needs. Tennessee has to replace Zakai Ziegler with his leadership, with his experience, his playmaking. Zakai could hit outside shots. I think Gillespie can do all of that. As an outside shooter, he's more proven than what Zakai was able to do. Now, Zakai had developed as a leader in the program over 4 years. Jacoby will be a newcomer taking on a leading role, but that's what they need. They have to replace the backcourt. So having somebody like Gillespie, who has helped lead a team to the Sweet 16, who has played in a tough conference in the Big Ten and knows plenty about Tennessee basketball and East Tennessee, I think Gillespie is a perfect addition to fill the needs that Tennessee has at that spot. They need to get help around him, and that is part of the goal now. But I think Gillespie was the most important player for Tennessee to add, and to add him to start out is really good for Tennessee basketball, trying to move on from Zakai Ziegler and replace all that he did.
So Tennessee's added 2 at the time of this recording. Tennessee's added 2 players via the transfer portal. Still at least 2 spots open, possibly 4. Who are some other names that you could see Tennessee kind of that are maybe linked to right now, but Tennessee could be exploring to try to add to this roster?
Well, I think a name that popped up immediately for a lot of people right after Gillespie's commitment was his teammate Rodney Rice, who also has options. But one reason that popped up is because Gillespie was talking about him, and it had been made clear he wants to play with him. So there's that aspect. Can they get involved? Not get involved. Can they make a stronger push with somebody like Nate Ament? Is somebody that Tennessee fans are really interested in from a recruiting standpoint. But they need shooting. They need scoring on the wing. Missing out on Isaac McNeely keeps that need top of mind. They wanted to add him from Virginia as a big-time outside shooter, and it didn't work out with him committing to Louisville last week. And that's going to happen. But Chaz Lanier came in and provided big-time outside shooting. Jordan Gainey was an outside threat off the bench. Both of those guys have to be replaced, and Tennessee has to go find that. So more shooting is something that Tennessee obviously needs. Gillespie helps start that out because he can help run the offense as well as be an outside shooting threat, but they've got to have more of that. They need as many offensive weapons. It's shooting, and it's also just scoring ability, because Jordan Gainey, I think, became a good player at attacking the basket. Earlier in the season, Rick Barnes called him the best driver. I thought as the season went along, Chaz Lanier was better at that. He was more aggressive in attacking the basket, but Tennessee needs somebody that can go to the rim and make plays there. Cam Carr could have been one of those players, but he left the team, and that was something that was missing, I think, late in the season. So if you look at it from that standpoint, what the roster was at the beginning of the year, they need to replace what they thought they had in Cam Carr and what they did have with Chaz Lanier and Jordan Gainey.
Yeah, Chaz Lanier, not bad for a guy that came over here and didn't do an awful lot, right? Jerry West Award winner. Your boy getting some more praise following his 1 year in Knoxville. That was a pretty daggone good season.
Yeah, good for him. We talked about the criticism that Chaz was receiving, and I think when we had our clip that we shared on social media, it was shortly after that Kentucky loss, the second one during the regular season. It's a bad loss and a bad performance by Chaz. He was 0 for 7 from 3. But if you looked at everything he had done leading up to that game, and then we can look at everything he did afterward, and I know the final game was a disappointing performance as well, but over the course of the season, Chaz was a tremendous addition for Tennessee's basketball program. He left as the single-season three-point leader, passing Chris Lofton. He went to the Jerry West Award as the nation's top shooting guard. And there's no way Tennessee makes the Elite Eight, returns the Elite Eight, and is a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament without adding Chaz Lanier last offseason. He was, I think, their biggest priority last offseason, and the results this season showed why.
When you look at Tennessee football, orange and white game coming up this Saturday, and that'll put a stamp on the spring practice session for the Vols. What are you hoping to see, hoping to hear about, hoping to see in the orange and white game come Saturday?
Well, playmaking at wide receiver, it's just been a talking point for the last few months now, leading up to spring practice and during it. What do we get to see out of somebody like Travis Smith, as he's garnered some more attention over the last few weeks and what he did in the first scrimmage of the spring? But just playmaking opportunities from the wide receiver position, running backs who have to replace Dylan Sampson. And does somebody emerge on the defensive side, depending on who's out there, to show, hey, that's a guy to watch again from a playmaking standpoint? That could be at linebacker, that could be in the secondary. And then I would throw Jake Merklinger into the conversation. I don't go into the spring game with any expectations of learning anything about Nico at quarterback, and we'll spend the next few months talking about him. But last year, Merklinger was a freshman that we didn't really talk about because Gaston Moore was the backup. But Merklinger steps into that position, and nobody wants Nico to get hurt or to go down. But if that happens, then Merklinger, second-year guy, former 4-star quarterback, is the guy. So let's see what kind of progress he's made, because reports have been positive about Jake. Let's see what kind of connection he might make with some of those receivers who are out there.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. I mean, dude's slinging the football around. He looks a whole lot better. So that's great to see.
And he was kind of just tossed out in conversation because there was so much anticipation of George McIntyre arriving. You get the commitment from a 5-star quarterback for this 2025 class. George is on campus now. But from Nico taking over to George McIntyre committing, Merklinger didn't get much talk. And again, he was the number 3 quarterback, so he wasn't going to play at all this past fall. But meanwhile, he was working to get better as a college quarterback. So he's somebody that's very important for Tennessee's offense.
Yeah, and he gets lost furthermore in that conversation with, Faison Brandon, another 5-star quarterback commit that's set to roll in next year. And it's like, from a fans conversation piece, it's like, well, Jake Merklinger is just going to transfer. Well, you never know. I mean, he's going to be the backup this year for sure. And then, whenever it's a competition between the 3 of those guys, I mean, he's going to have the leg up on both of those guys easily. So who knows what's in store. But, yeah, I think he's had a really, really good spring. Josh, is this the last spring game that we're going to see here at Tennessee?
Yeah, maybe, because we've seen other schools decide they're going to go in a different direction, and Tennessee could stick with the orange and white game and do it again next year. But if that doesn't happen and Tennessee decides to do more of a fan event and get away from what has been a spring game, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I think not every coach, I can't speak for every coach, but I would bet the majority of coaches, and Tennessee's coach might be one of them, would prefer to go away from a spring game and do something else, maybe get a practice back, but still be able to have a fan event where you can connect with the fan base, get them to campus, but allow your team to be separate from that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting over the next, after this season goes along, we're not going to think about spring practice, but I guess, next offseason, because Josh Heupel opened up his spring practice press conference saying that we love the spring game, don't want to move it. Danny White, I believe it was on John and Vince, said that he's got to have it, don't want to move it. So, Tennessee's back in the spring game, but you're seeing, across the SEC, across college football, programs getting rid of their respective spring games. And then you have Dion and, Fran Brown that are wanting to do a spring scrimmage, which I'd be all about. Could you ever, where you at on spring scrimmages? Does that do anything for you?
Well, it does more for me than a spring game from one team, for sure. When that talk has come up, I've been very skeptical. I just have viewed that as, okay, well, that's some fun off-season chatter, and I'm not sure anybody's ever going to do it. And a lot of the talk has been big school versus group of 5 level. And part of the issue there, at least while we're in the transfer and play right away era, is that smaller school coaches might worry about, okay, well, that school's just going to take my best player and use it as a tryout almost. Yeah. But when Colorado and Syracuse were talking about it, and it's not happening this spring, but when they were talking about really doing it, and then Mike Gundy made the comments that he did, it made me wonder, okay, well, can somebody just do this? And then it becomes a new thing. So this could be in the category of, well, somebody's got to do it. And once it happens, it becomes the new normal. I don't know if that's in the next year or so, but it does make me believe it's more possible. But sure, I think a big problem in college football is that too often coaches, administrators, schools, they do their best to avoid ever playing real competition. So getting some kind of competition that does not actually affect your record, and your teams can maybe get better from it, and fans can enjoy something from it, and the media can learn from something from it, sign me up for that.
Final week of spring ball, orange and white game on Saturday. Tennessee basketball assembling its roster via the transfer portal. A lot going on right now for you and Jason Swain over on Josh and Swain, right?
Yeah, we stay busy as baseball gets more of the on-field conversation, but the basketball offseason never really seems to stop, just like football now, getting ready for the upcoming second window of the transfer portal in football. So, yeah, we have a ton to cover, 12 to 3, Monday through Friday, available where you podcast the show as well. Anywhere you get podcasts, just search Josh and Swain. And then we have our Friday newsletter. It's free at joshandswain.com.
As always, man, appreciate you.
Thanks, Eric.
Great stuff as always there from Josh Ward. You can follow him on X at Josh_Ward. Does a great job with VFL Jason Swain, noon to 3 on 99.1 The Sports Animal. Guys, appreciate you for being here, guys and gals. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. 50% of the people that watch the show on YouTube aren't subscribed to the channel. Let's change that. Let's get that percentage up higher. It helps grow the show and get in front of more and more Tennessee fans. And, of course, please download and subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcast. That's the bread and butter, baby, the audio podcast. That's what builds this show for sure. So, guys, can't thank you enough for being here and listening to the show here today, watching the show. We'll be back tomorrow. Continue to look ahead at the orange and white game, what the latest is for Tennessee basketball in the transfer portal. All that and more coming up on a Thursday, Locked On Vols. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.